Hello, sorry about that, guys. I gave Robert the wrong link. Anyway, good evening, everybody. Robert Luther Smith. Hello, Rob. How are you? Hello.
I'm fine, thank you. Very
Oh,
well
right.
indeed. Thank
Okay.
you very much. Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Here
can.
I am. Here I
Here
am.
I am. Here
It's
I am.
Saturday night.
Saturday night at the movies. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was almost impossible not to talk about COP26.
Right. Okay.
How about that? That's brought deadly silence to everybody. So I thought it was quite amusing to talk about that. And there's talk about having a referendum about it, about
Is
this
there?
net zero. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No, I never.
Yeah, there's been talk. It's starting to get a bit of. Haven't you heard?
No,
Yeah,
tell me.
they're now decided, but people are starting to talk about the. Yeah, so I remember very vividly because I watch a lot of Parliament UK, BBC Parliament programme, and Theresa May was still the Prime Minister at that time. And I remember watching, and then suddenly she said that in 2050 we were going to have net zero. Now, I don't remember anything about being asked about net zero. In fact, I'm not even sure 2 years ago knew what it precisely was. And so since then we've had this whole explosion about net zero. And I mean, obviously there's COP26, and I don't know about anybody else, but I've just gone bonkers hearing the words climate change. It seems to be the only thing you ever hear if you turn on the news. And I have to say, for everyone viewing, that my family always watch the news, and it's really a part of my upbringing to watch the news, and I have it on even if I don't have the sound on. And so it was really this whole thing about what do they mean by net zero, and what are people expected to do. And so I'm sitting there idly listening to these, because I mean we spoke about postmodernism, or I did anyway, the other week. Was it last week or the week before? Which I think is correct, is that this is a whole postmodernist movement. They're really, if you scratch the surface, they're anti-capitalist. I mean, they were waving posters or banners and stuff about anti-capitalism and stuff like that. And it's really just an attack on the whole of the modern world that we have all grown up in. And this whole idea that we're going to stop using coal, stop using gas, changing over to electric cars, getting rid of gas boilers, for example. And every time anybody asks one of these, I don't know what we call them, I call them climatoids. When they ask one of these climatoids what they want to have done, none of them have got an answer. And in fact, I think I just read a quote by Greta Grunberg, as I like to call her. She said, it's not my job to give suggestions as to what they should do." Well, they're asking to change the climate, which I don't believe that humans either can change the climate in either way. I don't think they can change the climate one way or the other. I think the whole thing's a fantasy. We've had 5 major periods of climate change in the last 500,000 years. And the last one was about 11,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. I mean, they can't even really decide on that. And that's when England, Britain, finally the ice sheet broke from Europe. So the last bout of climate change created Britain as we know it today. The ice sheet moved way back off the whole of it back to the poles. So whenever they're asked, what are they going to do? You know, if they're saying that the COP26 isn't doing anything, what do they want us to do? What do they? And they haven't got an answer. They don't say. I mean, are you going to stop using coal? Well, go and talk to China. Are you telling us we should stop using oil? Well, most of us wouldn't have any clothes to wear for starters, because I was amazed to find out 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago just how much oil is used in clothes, for example. Are they going to get rid of gas tomorrow? What, we're going to switch off our central heating? I mean, what exactly is it they want to do? And I think that it goes because, I mean, whatever happens, I always get my history books out. And I mean, it's plainly obvious that the Green movement doesn't read history. Because, for example, Britain, for example, England, all the trees, not all the trees, but most of the trees have gone. Well, it wasn't capitalism that got rid of the trees, it was feudalism. And they used trees and wood for fires, for cooking. And they also use them, guess what, for ships. And in fact, round where I live in Bournemouth, the whole of the New Forest was cut down to make ships at Bewley, because they used to have, Henry VIII used to have a major shipping dock to make ships. Obviously, it was near Southampton. So that's what cut down the trees. It wasn't capitalism. And of course, they used firewood to start their cooking, to do their cooking. And they used to go out and collect wood. And then eventually they had to go further and further to go and collect their wood, until somebody said, here, mate, I've got some stuff called coal. So they started using coal, and coal was easier to use. It would be cheaper. Of course, it's much more heat efficient, isn't it? But most of the coal up to that time had been used in like blacksmiths. People forget about blacksmiths, but part of the blacksmiths aid in the creation of the feudal. Then Elizabeth after 50, they used coal. I mean, we got to blame the Renaissance for the use of coal. Coal, and that was what, 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800, and then in 1859, incredibly enough, so I think it was in Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, 1859, somebody saw this black stuff oozing out of the ground, and they discovered it was oil. So they took this oil, and what they made was paraffin, or what they call in America kerosene, I do believe, which is actually jet fuel. It's what aeroplanes run off, if nobody knows. So then they discovered, so instead of having to have dirty coal fires, you could have lovely, I mean, those paraffin burners, you know, they invented what would look like quite a modern paraffin burner. So that was good. I mean, imagine living in, you know, the Midwest of America in a pine log house. Suddenly, instead of having to have dirty coal fires with smoke going everywhere, you could have paraffin heaters. So that was a step forward. So we had paraffin. Well, that lasted for quite a while until they started pumping gas into our houses. Well, if any of us remember, there became an outbreak of suicides using the old form of, was it coal gas? I don't really quite know that. And that's when I remember, I must have been in the mid 60s, because I was a kid. I remember we got natural, natural gas.
Carbon dioxide,
in the mid 60s, we got natural gas, which wasn't so smelly, and you couldn't kill yourself with it. I think so. That's the, I think it's right. Was it monoxide? I mean, I don't know everything. I wouldn't want to know everything about chemistry. But so then we changed to natural gas, which is the stuff we use today. Well, imagine the changeover from wood to coal. Imagine the changeover from coal to a large bit of paraffin. I mean, it wouldn't have been total, obviously. Then you got the changeover from coal fires to gas fires. I mean, these things take time. They don't just happen immediately. And so then we sort of come up to where we are now, where we use mostly gas boilers to heat the house. and we use a certain amount of electricity. I might add that I got my smart meter fitted on Tuesday, which is actually quite useful, so you can see what you're using. So we've got
Yeah, I've got
gas
smart meters.
fires,
What do you think of
gas
that?
heating, should I say, and we use electricity for all the rest of it. I'm pretty
What do
good.
you
I mean,
think
it's a
of that?
toy. I've been playing around with it and looking every 5 minutes how much I'm spending. So I've worked it. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so to get the house warmed up, I mean, we live in a reasonably big house, and so I don't use all of the gas. So I use two in my mother's in the lounge now. So I use two radiators in there. I use one in the hall and one in my room. But it costs £5 to get the house heated up first thing in the morning because it's been cold the last few mornings, hasn't it? Last couple of mornings. So that was about. I have to use about £6 of gas and £2.50 electricity a day at the moment. I guess the electricity won't change because it hasn't done. If you look at your usage thing at your gas supplier or your utility supplier, so that's a good thing, you know. But how are we going to change? How are we going to change using gas and electricity? Electricity, they're not going to power electricity using renewables. It's not reliable enough. So I mean, I think I like the. I don't know if you've heard about these new mini nuclear power stations, because of course you've got nuclear submarines. So you have got small modular nuclear um, systems. So they're planning on making smaller modular um, somebody wandering in the background, smaller modular nuclear power stations that could provide the base load, I think they call it, don't they? Because you've got to have a base load. So if renewables aren't, and I'm all for renewables, don't get me wrong, I'm totally into it. I've got no issues with it at all. I mean, any good economist will tell you that you shouldn't rely on one source of income. And in the same way, you shouldn't rely on one power source. So we've got quite a few now, as I see it. We've got solar, hydro, wind farms, we've got biomass, we've got gas, we've still got some coal. I noticed on that Sky News thing there was some coal used this week. What's the other? Nuclear, and so you know you've got various supply different. But to get rid of gas, and there was an interest. It's just impossible. We're not going to be able to do it in 9 years. I mean, who's going to pay? Who's got the money to pay for these heat pumps? Which is although there was some Swedish woman that said they do work, many people say they don't. So I think that why? I mean, why would suddenly Theresa May turn up in Parliament and just say, right, we're going to go to net zero, without any warning whatsoever? Because if I put my business hat on, it's quite a thing, isn't it? If the Prime Minister says, right, we're going to have electric cars and heat pumps on this date, it's like giving big corporations a blank check, isn't it? I mean, they say, right, we know we're going to make money out of that. I mean, I think it's very dubious. I'm not too sure about that. But Sky News, I think it was Sky anyway, carried a story about this place called Muswell Brook, I think in Australia. It's a town, and it's a coal town. And they were interviewing there, and they said, we're not going to give up coal. They're a huge mining town. They're selling tons of coal. They all make their living out of coal. I mean, they can't be expected to just swap from coal and close the whole thing down. And this is going to be all over the place. And so, what's bubbling up underneath all this? I mean, electric. What you're going to get in 2030, which is a long time away anyway. So I'm very dubious we'll get to it. But you're going to have a huge used car, petrol engine or diesel, obviously internal combustion engine. You're going to have a huge market. So hang on to your combustion engine cars because their price is just going to increase because you're going to have a massive used car market. And apparently, because of the lack of chips, computer chips, they're not making so many cars anyway. The used car market, so you're going to have it's growing. So the prices of your old cars are actually increasing, incredibly enough. So you're going to get to this point where, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people about it. They're extremely dubious about, and I'm talking about your average person. I'm not talking about, I mean, I talk to a lot of ordinary people or, everyday people. I mean, I like to think I'm an everyday person. You know, I get up, I do stuff, and they just can't see it. You know, how are we going to get an electric car? You know, and an oil system. You know, what about military? How are we going to fossil fuel? That's not going to happen, is it? Going to change to fossil fuel places like that. I mean, I think it's fascinating. I think this is why people like want to get any answers to what they think they should do, because secretly they know they can't, because really what it's all about is anti-capitalism. They're just against the system as it stands. They're against what we call the modern world.
I'm losing you.
So they move on from what they perceive as the oil, bustling capitalist world. They move into this other world, but they have absolutely no idea how we're going to get to this other world. We can't stop using gas.
I'm losing you.